Hi, Chris McLoone here with Fire Apparatus and Emergency Equipment. Welcome to this episode of our podcast. We're going to be talking trucks again today. Talking trucks with Ricky Riley, our frequent guest here. He's been on to talk trucks. He's been on to talk NFPA. He's been on to talk about the current apparatus purchasing environment. So we're going to talk a little bit about probably well, you might get into all those things. Wanted to start off today. I'm fresh off of a trip, and it was a pretty cool trip. It was off to Lansing, Michigan, where I went to the fire truck training conference. It's been around for 30 years, although it's only been put on 28 times because COVID kind of interrupted it there. But it's a pretty cool event. Ricky, have you ever been to the fire truck training conference?
No, I was following you in social media this week. The social media mogul that you are, Chris, and watching everything.
I'm working on that. I wouldn't call me a mogul just yet. There's a ways to go.
Just kind of watching what was going on. I can remember. I think we talked earlier. I can remember you going there before, but I don't think you chronicled it nearly as much with the videos and the pictures and everything.
No, not with the videos. That was kind of new. And if anybody wants to see, we did some TikTok, we did some Instagram, we did some Facebook. So we sprinkled it around. One of the themes from that, I'll tell you a little bit about it. It was a pretty cool event. One of the themes that I brought out of it was being the obvious choice. We'll get back to that in a bit, but let me just give you a background, Ricky, since you hadn't been yet. It's kind of a unique conference in that it is specifically for emergency vehicle technicians and the mechanics. You can choose to take all week. You can choose to take EVT prep classes, EVT test prep classes, which would culminate in you taking the tests, whichever one you're trying to test into. Or there are a lot of component sessions. So these are taught by manufacturers. One of the important things about it is that they're not selling to you. They are there. They are manufacturer representatives, but they really, when you think about it, are the subject matter experts of their particular products. And I sat through some really good sessions. Have you ever heard of TJ Tennant? Have you ever heard of him, the tire guy?
Yeah. I've heard the
You have heard of him? Yeah. He was there. I sat through a lot of his class. I'll tell you what, I don't know how much you think you know about tires, Ricky. I'm sure you know more about me, just given the position you're in. But a lot of people may think they know tires, but there is a lot to learn about them. And especially when it comes to something we spoke about with Chris Daly not so long ago, was just some of the not litigation. I mean, it's litigation, but how departments can be found at fault, if something does go wrong. Tires are a big part of that with some of the collisions. But with something that might be of interest to you, maybe not, there was a lot of ambulance. There were many ambulance classes this year. A little bit on the restraint systems that are found there. Some of it was on the HVAC systems because they are a little different too. So it was really pretty cool.
It's interesting that you mentioned that because we're going through some problems with some ambulances now with vibrations, and they're brand spanking new ambulances, and we get them in, and it's like at 50 and then at 70, and just to so obviously we've been going through a lot of the processes to try to get that resolved with our the local tire dealer, and to watch the oh, well, this weight was previously installed on another vehicle, so it doesn't clamp well. And we put this bead in, we put that bead in, and that they're actually flying somebody in now to go evaluate it all during like a road trip. And so the technology and the masterminds behind all that. You think tire weights are not a big deal, but man, it just if somebody like even clips a curb and takes one of those wheel weights off, it just the amount of shimmy that can get in the vehicle, so how delicately balanced they are, and you just didn't think that because obviously we go through tires every day with flat tires, rims broken, everything like that. I said, just send it up there and get a new tire put on it, but how much the rim balance comes into play and all that, and then of course now it's did we weigh them after they were fully loaded? Are they properly, do we have the proper PSI in the tire for the weight? We take that up to the local dealer. I mean, I put some, my vehicle, we put a cap and a box on it, and we put new tires on it, and the guy filled it up to 100 and some odd PSI. That's what the tire said. I mean, I felt like I was riding on marbles at that particular time, but just going back there and going, hey, this is the amount of weight we're carrying. Please adjust it for that. And they have a chart, and they make phone calls, and I'm sure but I meant the tire stuff is crazy. I mean, I would have loved to have seen a tire class. I know that probably sounds boring to our firefighters that they want to go in and put fires out and stuff, but tires will get you to the fire. So,
well, yeah, for sure. And if you Google TJ Tennant, I think it's the tireguys.com, TYRE though. There's a lot out there on that. He takes what you just thought might sound like a boring topic, and he makes it pretty lively. It's a really, really good class. I would suggest it to anybody who can do that. One thing I never even thought of, you can actually, if you don't set the tires right, the wheel can turn within the tire. Oh. Which to me was like this really foreign concept. But when they explained it, it's like, wow, that makes total sense. That I don't remember for sure what was causing it, but you could have a situation where you could apply the brakes and the wheel stops, but the tires are still turning. So it's really, really interesting. And they went through with us. They had big picture. I'm sure a lot of people who are on this have been to FDIC or any of the other conferences that are out there. So you picture like a convention center and one of the classrooms inside, and there were probably 15 to 20 tires just sitting in the room that they started off. We were able to go through, just look at the tire, figure out, how new it was, which you might already know, but we could tell from the tire where it was on the vehicle, which side of the vehicle it was on, and likely what was causing the problem that caused it to fail. So really, really cool stuff. But it was that kind of stuff that it's geared specifically for the technician. So it's really, really cool. A lot of component classes, like I said. But what I love about going there is just listening to the technicians, listening to them at the table. I mean, you can get obviously a ton of information out of the classes that they're taking. But for me, listening to them and listening to what is ailing them or working out great for them at work is really the important piece. Because when you look at it, I am sure, Ricky, that there are people on the West Coast who are having the same type of issues or same type of challenges with their fleets that you're having here, that may have a totally different solution than you've come up with that might actually work really well for you. And to listen to them talk about that. Last year, you mentioned last year, they didn't have it this year because I think they're staggering it, but they had a seat class. And two of the seating manufacturers were in the front, and all they did was talk about things that may come up with the seat and how they can fix them. And they talked about a lot of different things. There was one guy there who they were talking about replacing the bag on an air ride seat, and this guy had created a specific jig that he would put under the seat, so basically so it doesn't come flying down and cutting your fingers off after you take the bag out. But it was just things like that are really cool. We talk about tricks of the trade a lot when we're talking about forcing doors and hose movement and hose line, hose packs and all that kind of stuff. There are a lot of tricks of the trade that can be picked up when you put a bunch of repairers in a room together. So that was really cool.
We're gonna have to start using that one, repairers.
But it's for EVTs and those who do not have the EVT certification alike. So it was really great. And, they give out an award every year. It's named for Bill Foster, and this year it was a division chief in Toronto who was awarded it. And it was great. He was talking about the first trucks he drove, and how how they ran, and you really, as much as I don't know, I wouldn't say as much as we complain about the trucks today. That's not what I mean. But as much as we may think, that there are challenges with today's vehicles, they pale in comparison to what people were driving, 40, 45 years ago. It's almost like, I said to Fire Engineering's web editor one day, I forget the context, how we got into it, but I was saying, I guess probably I was teaching one of my kids to drive. And, I remember what life was like when my dad was teaching me to drive, and, what it's like now with them. And, kids today, they don't know the feeling of the car not starting. You know what I mean? Like, you get in, you turn the thing, it starts, or you push a button now,
Yeah.
and it starts. There were no possibly flooding the carburetor kind of things where you're sitting there and having to know how many times to press the gas pedal before you tried to start it without flooding it. I can't tell you how many. I had a '78 Dodge Aspen, and I used to have to get out in that, and because it would stall at like a red light or something, and then it would get flooded. I carried a can of starter fluid underneath the front seat. That was probably lucky I didn't blow myself up as I did that, but I'd have to get out, pop the hood, spray it in, get in, hope it would start again. So, when you think of, when you listen to some of the guys who have been doing this for a long time, you really do realize how good we have it right now with the rigs that we've got. But one of the things I wanted to ask you about, based on on a lot of the conversations there, was shop labor. I'm relatively sure that you and I have spoken before, and while it may not have hit you too hard, there have, you are, still, trying to find, good mechanics, good technicians has been a challenge, if not for you, then, but for other departments. And there are a bunch of different ways. And don't worry, I am going to let Ricky talk eventually.
No, I'm good.
But there are, when you look at the labor troubles that a lot of places are having right now, there's the I can't find anybody. The chief who won the award from Bill Foster, he said, he's in Canada, so he goes, I don't know what it's like in America, but I used to get 100 applications, when we were hiring for mechanics or EVTs. He goes, now I only get 50. And of those 50, there's hardly any that are usable. So he's struggling up there too. I was eavesdropping a little bit on a conversation between some techs at one of the lunches, and they all knew each other. I don't know if they were nearby departments, or maybe they were all in the same department but different divisions. I'm not sure. But they were asking how this one new mechanic was doing, and the guys were like, well, I don't know. We're going to move him over to here because he's not really a go-getter. He'll do whatever you tell him to do, but as far as problem solving, he's not really getting it that much. So then you have that aspect where you hire the person, but it's hard to fit them in somewhere. And then it's just the idea. We just ran from your buddy Mike up in Baltimore, an Apparatus the Shops column on how to find good technicians, and so it's finding them to begin with as well. So what are you having any of these kind of problems where you are? And I'm not looking for you to signal out any of your guys or anything, but I have to think that if you're not, a neighboring department might be. And you guys, I'm sure, all talk to each other. So how is it in the world of fleet maintenance and finding labor for the shops?
We don't talk to each other because we always try to steal everybody's employees. That's that's the problem. I think it's becoming critical now. I believe it's trying to find. So I mean, we deal with a number of manufacturers, their dealers, and their dealer network. And as when you buy a fire truck, regardless of the manufacturer, you don't go, oh, I'm going to take it to the XYZ fire manufacturer and get it fixed. You work through a dealer network, and the dealer networks have service centers. I did a talk in Pennsylvania here a couple years ago, and told them, I said, look, you want to increase sales, increase service. Just because when their fire truck breaks, if you don't fix it, they remember that, man. A buyer or a fire department will remember that you didn't fix their fire truck, or it took you X amount of time to fix their fire truck, or you couldn't figure it out. So, hey, we're going to exclude you from the next, bid or the next purchase, whatever it is. But, the people that submit these for-profit companies, so, the dealers and the networks and stuff like that, the for-profit people, I don't think they fully grasp it, because, I ask them a lot of questions about, what their hourly rate is for the employees, and, as it compares to a government employee rate, and I just can't, I think that this trade of fixing fire trucks or being a mechanic is going away. And that's the scary part but I mean, you look at, it isn't, I don't think it's a reflection of kids today or young men today, or however you want to phrase it. It's just that, that it's not there. I mean, to go in there, hey, I'm going to get dirty from head to toe. I looked at a mechanic today. I mean, this kid's, if he opened his eyes, that's the only way I knew he was standing there. I mean, he had been working on one of these older rigs, like 20 years old. So it's got 20 years of grime and dirt and everything on it. And it's got a hydraulic leak and an oil leak. And, and I just don't think people are going, why am I going to get this filthy, this dirty? Shops aren't air conditioned most of the time. So it could be hot, or, hey, most of the time they're heated, it could be cold. I can go earn this amount of money that a government's going to pay me, at doing something else where I don't have to do all this crazy work. And then even for the profit companies, and I don't mean that in a negative way, that they're profit companies, but obviously they have to make money to survive, is that I don't know if they value that trade as much as they should. I mean, I would think that, the way that unionized firefighters, and that's not a hit on unionized firefighters, get their pay rates and negotiate their contracts is the same way mechanics should be able to do that. Is one, hey, be in the union, or hey, and obviously, unions are a touchy subject this week. But, or, be able to, if you're for the profit, to go back and renegotiate, if you're doing well, you're that go-getter mechanic, as opposed to what you were listening to, is that, hey, we do give you a bonus, or we do increase your hourly rate, or whatever, benefit that we can give them to keep them there. I mean, having good mechanics, man, that is crucial. I mean, I fight. I don't think I need to fight. I'd pay special attention to them. With the 20 or some odd people that may be at work, we got to pay attention to people that are fixing it. Hey, what can we get you? What can we not? What's going wrong? What's going right? So it goes back to, do they have the right tools? Like you talked about that jig. What do we as the bosses? What can we buy you to make this job easier? What tool do you need? What tools can we purchase? Is it more fans? Is it, this special tool they have? And then, trying to figure out their work conditions. If you got a good worker, we can burn them out. I mean, you give any fire department the chance to burn a person out, and they'll do it. We take a good worker and then just keep piling on work and keep piling on work. Paying attention to their needs, and, hey, do we give them some time off? Because we can go back to buying lunches. I mean, it's just anything to keep that mechanic happy, because, if we can have all these labor issues being hiring problems with fire departments across the country, that could go career or volunteer, I believe. I don't think any fire department goes, I have way too many applicants, that just doesn't happen anymore. But you can hire all the applicants in the world, but if you don't have fire trucks and ambulances and cars for them to ride in, that's going to be a problem. So if we don't, compensate, retain our mechanics in the government world, which is more difficult than I believe in the for-profit or the dealer world, and I think those people need to recognize how important they are. And once again, I'm not running a big dealership. I'm not running a big Pierce or E1 or Spartan dealership where it's I can imagine the pressures they're under to turn a profit. Because shops are expensive. I mean, they're extremely expensive. I mean, Mark, from New York will tell you, I mean, that it's easy to have all this stuff in stock for the government because, we're not paying taxes on it every year. We're not paying all that money. And it could sit there. I could have a, radiator in there for a 90s fire truck, but that I outlaid that money. And when is it actually going to break? And when am I going to put it on there? Then I'm going to order another one. So the people are critical. I believe that they deserve the same compensation that some of our firefighters get, just due to the fact that it is a highly technical business that they're working in. I mean, the amount of education that they have, and the continuing education that they have to do, and then the daily education. I mean, we can send them to the fire truck training conference, and obviously I'm going to look into that next year. I don't think I have it in my budget under under training for that, but I can send them there, but there's no guarantee that that's what's going to break on Tuesday, and they're going to have to find a new thing out. So, we actually got them touchscreen, big TV screen that they can touch, and they can go on and try to do the research for it. So they're not like stuck in the office. So they're still there at the truck. Once again, just something we're trying out to help out, them that, of course we got to clean it about every 2 days from all the grease prints from on it, from the pressing it. But, that keeps them at the truck. It keeps them looking at, what the problem is, and then looking at what the solution might be. And of course that adds out of service time because, it's something they don't know, or they have to learn, on the job. So, which is a good thing. I mean, obviously our young mechanics certainly tag onto those senior mechanics, and, oh yeah, this is how I replace this. And, I use airbags as an example. You give airbag suspension bags that maybe in the rear of the apparatus. I give that to a new mechanic, it'll be in 3 hours, and you give it to one of our veterans, it's 45 minutes. They got an airbag, okay, and just because they know how to do it. So, yeah, I mean, there's probably, in my world, I mean, you can't pay them enough money sometimes because, at 3 o'clock in the morning when the fire truck breaks, what are you going to do if you don't have a reserve, or, that's the rig that's got to be in service. And, that person, it may not go inside burning buildings and save babies and lives like that, but they're certainly an integral part of the fire service. And, I think we should start recognizing that more.
Let me ask you this about, this was another conversation I was eavesdropping on. Well, no, actually, no, this wasn't an eavesdrop one. This was when I was actually engaging with the guy, and he was in charge of a fleet. It was the guy who was running the fleet shop, and then one of his technicians. And I don't know if this happens with you. Like last year when I went there, it was one of the things that I wrote up about it was, don't be the guy, don't be the company that the fleet manager comes to, your captain and says, what are they doing to this thing that it keeps coming back here for the same thing over and over again kind of deal. And this one was so that's the one thing. But so that was at the company, the fire company level. Those guys were doing something that was causing, the same repair over and over and over again. This time, the problem at the company level was that they were not, there's two ways to look at this. They were not letting the fleet manager know with little ticky-tack kind of things. So then when something bigger came up that the truck had to be taken out of service, it goes in for one thing, but they come up with a list like this, of all the other little things that they should have been told about before, that could have been fixed before, and now it's really out of service longer. And then, of course, they got the chief coming to them saying, why isn't this truck back in service yet? And he's like, look, I don't know what to tell you. It came in for this, and now I got a list like this. how do you work through things like that? You've been a fleet manager for a couple of different departments. Maybe you came across that at one of them, maybe not. But have you ever run across stuff like that where like you start off with one thing, but it becomes a whole list, which of course increases the out of service time, and your goal is to get that truck back out there as quick as possible.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I was laughing while you were saying because it's a weekly thing, if not a daily thing that happens. And I don't think we're special for that thing. I'm quite sure it happens all the way across the country. And obviously, you were in Michigan and heard about it, but that's a big thing that we fight. I talk with my garage supervisor about it all the time. Or hey, we're running low on trucks today. We don't have enough reserves, and then somebody goes, "Oh, I have a brake problem," or I've got a bad air leak, or all right, well, we're going to stop what we had scheduled, to get that truck in. The truck gets in, then we start, repairing the brakes or putting new brake pads on or fixing the road or whatever, and the crew's there. And then the guy shows up with like 9 or 10 different things, now we're like, okay, we went from a 2 to 3 hour repair to a 4 to 5 hour repair. I mean, even when we send stuff to dealers, I mean, look, we get overwhelmed. Some, depending on the day of the week it is, of, hey, we can't triage enough. We don't have enough mechanics, or somebody could be on leave, or we got emergency road calls. So a lot of times we'll send a truck to the dealer and go, hey, look, hey, knock out this problem and get it taken care of. And then he, of course, the dealer, the for-profit people are, well, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. There's 7 lights out of service and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, doesn't know anything about it. We're certainly moving to try to create some of that with Vector Check It, which is, an online program that is going to be able to tell us what the technicians, the field apparatus technicians, find wrong with the apparatus, and then we get emails. Obviously, we're working through some of that now. Obviously, the big ticket items, tires, brakes, emergency lighting, leaks, and stuff like that. But the marker light out, the DOT light out, or something like that, that would all kind of be put in there. But it's a challenge when firefighters in the field let those lists grow. One, it's a financial burden because now it's the truck we just did was gone to the dealer for almost 2.5 months and was like $20,000 to get repaired. Just all the knick-knack stuff, because when it's there, it's identified. I mean, we got to fix it. The truck's out of service, but having them in a reserve now is taking that away from another company. Depending on the size of your organization, I don't know what New York's reserve fleet looks like. I don't know what LA City's reserve fleet looks like, or Jacksonville, Florida, whatever those, how many engines they have, how many trucks they have, and then is it going to match what's actually breaking in the field every day, or what somebody's going to determine is broken. It's just, it's frustrating to not do that. I mean, for when I'm riding a rig, like in Virginia, when I was, a truck driver, I mean, we had a really good fleet program, even back then in the early 2000s and, in the late 90s. And they had a roving mechanic that would come around and fix the knick-knack stuff. So the rig was pretty much solid every day. I don't know that anybody can afford to do that anymore. Just I'm going to have a mechanic ride around, but then what's he going to fix? I mean, obviously fixing something like you were talking about in the truck from 20 to 30 years ago is a little easier as opposed to trying to fix something today. What sensor's bad, and stuff like that. It's kind of interesting. I mean, we're working with our chosen manufacturer, with a diagnostic program that's even more enhanced that will tell us, hey, this light's out, this sensor's bad, this is, and I can't imagine the amount of inputs that's going to take on the fire truck. It's in its infancy. So, I don't know what it's actually going to look like, but to be able to pull up a truck in the fleet and go, all right, there's, the oil needs to be changed. The transmission needs a service. We have 2 DOT lights out, and all this sort of stuff. To have that list compiled by a computer, man, that would be fabulous. So
Well, one of the classes I sat in on was a fleet management class, and the one another one of the I heard about labor there too. That was one of the challenges that they were talking about. But one of the things that came up was working with non-standardized fleets and how that can impact, the staff of the shop. And I was curious because I mean, I've known you since you were in two
yeah,
different departments,
yeah,
and in each of those departments, the fleet was moving, if not arrived at a standardized fleet. You're
yeah.
doing that now, but that takes time. And so what was the process like for doing that? Like, I mean, where do you even start, and how long does that take? Because I mean, you're working within the constraints of a municipal budget.
Yeah.
These trucks, even I mean, yes, they're expensive now, but for whatever it was 10 years ago, they were expensive then. I mean, they're not an inexpensive item to try to put together. So talk about that process of moving toward a standardized fleet, which, when you think about it, should theoretically, you know, be easier for your shop staff to work on.
Yeah, and I think that was the crux of that. Like you talked about when I was in Florida. Hey, we started buying new engines, and we're like, all right, I just said, hey, look, I want you to be able to work at station 1 or station 8, and because with a career fire department, you don't work at the same firehouse every day. There's overtime, there's mandatory overtime, there's details out of the firehouse, and you shouldn't have to be able to go, hey, I'm going to go from station 1 to station 8, and then when I get there, I got to spend an hour getting familiarized with the apparatus. Anywhere from where the hand lights are located to how the hose is loaded. So that starts at standardization. We were as a small department, relatively small department with X amount of stations. Is that so it took us almost 8 to 9 years to get the whole frontline fleet replaced to where we needed to be. But then hey, let's go back to our reserve fleet. Let's gut the compartments. Let's redo all the compartments so they kind of match the newer rigs that we're buying. And once again, it was just a money thing, and then obviously convincing the boss. Because that fire department had one boss. Our current fire department had a series of bosses. But as you get a bigger fire department, you go on there. But I think that now it's based on out of service time, and we don't track our out of service time nearly as good as we should per vehicle. Like vehicle number 114 had X amount of time out of service, as opposed to, obviously with computer systems, it tracks that engine 1 is out of service for, 2 or 3 hours, but they could be switching into reserve rig. But what have we really tracked on the vehicle, based on its VIN number or based on its county or government assigned ID number? But I mean, the point of having those parts is that, I went back in the parts room my first or second year, and I'm like, oh my God, what is going on back here? There's 5 different sets of gauges, for a master intake gauge. Well, we got to have one that says this manufacturer, and we got to have one that says that manufacturer, and then the rings don't match, and just starting there somewhere small is like, all right, this is the only manufacturer of gauges we're going to have to do, and but that has to be buy-in from the boss, because once again we're narrowing the field of purchasing. So hey, when we go out to do bid, we're going to say, hey, we need XYZ gauge, XYZ alternator, this kind of belt, this kind of tire, this kind of rear axle, this kind of brake. So that kind of, now we're kind of taking those manufacturers, out, because maybe that, particular manufacturer doesn't have a dealing or a contract with this kind of brake company or that kind of brake company or that kind of axle company. So it's pretty important, to understand what works. So, I mean, we went through a year or two of fumbling around, fumbling around going, all right, this is what we want as our base as an engine. This is what we want our base as a truck. And, we just got to where we're at base with rescue squads. But, that's great. We got all the compartments right. We got the cab right. Now it's dealing with the standardization of all the stuff that goes in there. Once again, how many sets of hydraulic tool motors are we going to keep, and how many, extra set of blades, and how many sets extra arms and hoses, and it's just, somebody's got to say stop, and usually that's a fire chief, uh, or a support services chief that goes, hey, look, we need to sell this. This has to be the way we do business. I think we've cut down the price of parts because we're only stocking one part. We're stocking one steering wheel, and it's got one steering wheel. It's got an airbag. And that's it. And to be unique is just, it can't. If you're managing a fleet, unique is not a good thing by far at all. Even with specialty rigs, I mean, we're talking about we buy tankers with commercial chassis. So we're at the mercy of the commercial chassis dealer when we have a problem that can't be solved in house. Mm-hmm. And let me give you a hint: the dump truck guy has more clout than the fire truck guy has when you show up to the commercial dealer. So, I mean, we're talking about doing customized chassis underneath a tanker, just so we have all the parts that match. Whether it's the same motor, same alternator, same belts, same axles, same brakes that we have. So we don't have to stock a commercial chassis brake or a commercial chassis alternator. Once again, it's going to cost us a little bit up front, but I think over the life of the vehicle, it's going to save us out of service time, which is, it's really, that was one of the biggest things. I had one of my, support services chief, well, how do we track, the cost, of the vehicle over its length, or how do we track how good of a vehicle it is? And it's kind of hard to track, exactly, and I'm sure there's better shop managers than I am out there, that, how do we track if it's a good vehicle, how long it's been out of service, how many days, how do you track that, and what program, and what was the real problem? Obviously I think we're seeing again a spike in the ability to get parts,
Mm-hmm.
And once again, oh, well, it's going to take 2 weeks. I mean, once again, it's based on your fleet. I mean, so everybody wants to go, we can't buy, I'm sorry, I'm going to get on a tangent, Chris. So we can't buy new fire trucks. We can buy new fire trucks, but it's going to take you 4 years to get one. And regardless of manufacturer, I mean, obviously there's some, if you're buying something generic or off the shelf, you can get certainly less time. So yeah, let's go buy a used fire truck. Let's go buy, let's keep an older rig in service. And yeah, that's a great idea. And we're doing that a little bit, but now we got a fire truck that's been sitting out of service for 5 weeks waiting on a door latch. And we had to go find it on eBay. I mean, because nobody can find one. And, we got a pretty big network, I believe, of, people that can try to help us find parts and pieces. But I mean, that's going to be somebody's problem. And then you talk to our engine people that, the Detroit dealer that we deal with, he deals with Cummins and, all these other different motors. And, this is the road guy, the guy's got gray hair. I think he's only got like 4 fingers on each, just on each hand. Just, hey man, I don't know where I'm going to get this part for this Series 60 motor. I have no idea where I'm going to be able to find it. Then you come, 4 weeks later, he goes, oh, we found it in Wyoming. I'm like, how do you find a part for a Series 60 motor in Wyoming? But I mean, it's a bad deal. I think fleet managers are banging their heads against the walls. I mean, I think fortunately for us, we adopted a chassis pretty early, and then made I told our parts guy, I said, if the mechanics come back and want, part ABC, not only do you get part ABC times 1, you better get it times 3. You have 2 more on the shelf for them. So I think that's kind of helped us out, but not everybody can do that. And I can't understand. I feel for them in their struggles as they try to get that stuff. So.
Well, you brought up a good point, and that's really, a lot of times, even with dissimilar manufacturers for a fleet, a lot of times the time is spent standardizing what's in the compartments, where the things are located in the compartments. versus versus the repair aspect, the fleet management aspect of it. But this also does go very nicely into how important it is to make sure that you have somebody from the shop on the apparatus purchasing committees, because they're going to be the ones who can talk about what needs to work the most. And then also though, uh, how to lay it out, where I was just having a conversation about electric valves earlier, about where to make them so that they're accessible and all that stuff. So I mean, it really does, when you're standardizing the fleet from a fleet management standpoint, it also does impact the operations as well. It probably starts in operations most of the time, trying to standardize it there, but you forget just how streamlined it can kind of streamline as much as you can streamlining the fleet management aspect of it. You can't stop you can't stop the accidents from happening. You can try to reduce them as much as you can, but you can't you can't predict what Joe Smith driving down the street's going to do. So but also when you get into the logistics of, like you were talking about, having to take one truck out of the line that you were working on to work on the one that just came in, kind of a thing, to get that back out the door as quickly as possible. It's just all those things come together, and it really does increase the operational efficiency and the shop, fire operations efficiency and the shop side of it. I got off on a weird tangent. I tried to bring it back. I might have failed bringing it back together, but
we fight that. We fight that every day. So you go back to your question about the long lists. A busy fire department, busy EMS service, and the fire department is a 24-hour day operation. The repair shops are usually not a 24-hour, unless you're the New Yorks or the LAs or stuff like that. For us, it's like, hey, look, if you don't get this rig in here and let us get it fixed in our 8 or 10 hours that we're here, how's that going to affect your in-service time? Are you out of service time for the rig, or the company being out of service? Or, hey, we don't have enough reserve rigs, so now, hey, we got to ship people out to another firehouse, and then what area are we leaving uncovered? It's just like this domino effect that happens that, I don't think people see them. And, 3:00 in the afternoon, your air conditioner's been out in your ambulance since 8:00 this morning, but you don't tell somebody to 3:00. I'm like, that's really great. You got another, 18 or 19 hours in your shift, but there's no mechanics here to fix it. Do
you find they try to fix it themselves and make it worse? What's that?
Oh, God, no. And look, I say that in a joking way. We definitely have a lot of great technicians or drivers, whatever your fire department calls chauffeurs, that definitely take the time to learn the rig. But in a big fire department, or even a small fire department, you're going to have the people that are, it's broke, come fix it. It's a light bulb. Not that there's light bulbs anymore. It's a whole head, and they'll try to fix it. But a lot of that is not the case. And obviously today, with multiplex fire trucks, I don't want anybody in there cutting any wire to much anything, trying to fix something, because the problems that could have them. And one of our bigger problems was, they would, we don't like the where this was mounted. We're going to try to mount it somewhere else, and then drill into a wiring harness or drill into an airline or something like that. So we've kind of, hey, don't try to fix as much. Let us know what the problem is. We'll help you decide if we think you're able to do it or not. And not that, hey, we're the be all to end all, but look, we got an idea. If this is the light that's broken, or this is the bracket or something that's broken, we can try to help you, walk you through that, to keep the truck in service till we can get it to a better spot or get it down the shop to work on it. But it's a challenge every day. Like I said, I don't know how Mark did it in New York, man. Just the size of fleet, and and I could probably go back to 4 or 5 of these webcasts or podcasts or whatever we've done, where I'm like, we need to get the LA City guy on there, because I want to hear how they do stuff too, because I mean, it's got to be a challenge in those big, huge fleets. And I think we're fortunate because we're dealing with one or two manufacturers now. But before we were dealing with 5, 6, 7 manufacturers, and how much brain space does a mechanic have to figure out, all the intricacies of every manufacturer's electrical system, or how they mount this or how they mount that, or how they bolt this on or how they bolt that back on. It's a challenge. I think that's pretty important. It kind of startles me when I see some fleets, even close to us, that are 10, 12 department stations. Oh, we're going to buy 2 of these and 2 of those and 2 of these, and we're going to see which one works great. I said, yeah, but that's 15 years.
Yeah.
15 years of having that truck and 15 years of keeping parts for it. And, it's just, I just don't get it. I mean, look, you could be burned. You decide, hey, look, I'm going to do a huge fleet replacement. You pick the wrong manufacturer, or that rig doesn't work for you, and it could be bad, or it could be a great thing, a great experience. And, I think regardless of manufacturer, I think there's been great successes and great failures depending on where it is in the country and call volume. And, the preventive maintenance is important also. I mean, I always giggle and laugh when people post on pictures on the internet of the fire truck with the tires that were falling off of them. You have to do preventive maintenance on that. Stuff has to happen to that for that to be good. If you don't put any grease or lube, or you don't fill the boot up, then yeah, it's going to dry out and it's going to snap off. I mean, so it's not the fire truck manufacturer's fault. It's the preventive maintenance portion of it that came into play. So there was somebody to blame for that, and that could have been my guy, but we haven't had that happen. Knock on wood. So,
well, going back to those lists, those long lists, what do you think? Why do you think the guys on the street are not communicating the problems when they have them initially? Is it because of taking one truck out of service and unloading it and putting it on the reserve piece, and then having to turn around and take it all off the reserve piece and put it back on? What is it what do you think it is that makes them say, like, nah, we'll sit on it for a while?
Yeah, they don't want to swap out. They if you're riding around in a 2022 engine with a good air conditioner and it's the middle of summer, for instance, and I'm going to go get in a reserve that has no air conditioning, yeah, I'm probably not going to report that there's 3 DOT lights out, or I got one valve that's bad, or something like that. So then okay, now we don't have any tires left. They're down to below the required limit, the tolerable limit. So now I have to go get tires. While we're down there, let's see if we can get these 17 things fixed.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just, and then depending on the busyness of your department, can you even put the rig out of service? Or can you put the ambulance out of service? Is the call volume so busy that day that it can happen? But I just don't think people want to swap out, get into a reserve, and don't want to put the work in. I think it's important to have that rig top notch. But I was very spoiled in both my positions, prior to this one, that where well funded, good apparatus choices, good fleet program, good preventive maintenance. So those lists didn't get that long. But when you're busy and tearing them up down the road, I mean, when you got a fire truck 2 years into its life and it's got 100 and some odd thousand miles on it, that's tearing it up. Mm-hmm. And we're not the only organization in the country that has that problem. So, I think all fleet managers are fighting it. So,
well, we've talked a lot today about something that we have the luxury of. Talking about how we're fixing our rigs, talking about rigs that we have, and I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up Hurricane Helene. No. And the impacts that has had on those several southern states, particularly North Carolina, but also Tennessee. We just posted something recently about there was a fire department, their station and their rigs were washed away. Oh. I mean, it's not only the fire departments down there, our buddy Sam Massa from High Vis he had a rough time. They're just getting the business back up and running, and they're trying to do their part to help the communities as well. So I mean, really, as much as we all talk today, we both we were talking about, oh yeah, the lists that come in, and boy, that slows this down and slows that down. Boy, I mean, like, to think about what those guys are going through down there right now is just unbelievable. And that's only one example
Yeah.
of a station that was impacted. I'm sure there were more stations that were impacted. Maybe they didn't get washed away, but they probably took on quite a bit of water and their rigs.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty that I think that's the dramatic effect and the devastating effect is what you're talking about. The firehouse gets washed away, the rigs get washed away. Man, many years ago, we went or went to a class, a review of Katrina, and with New Orleans, and what was most interesting to me was the fleet perspective of that. And I wasn't in fleet then; I was in operations. But Clearwater, Florida, where I used to be. I mean, I prepared for hurricanes for 11 years, and they're barely in the news after Tennessee and North Carolina got in the news. But I mean, they were devastated. I mean, that was the worst I'd ever seen Clearwater Beach in my short time there. I'm sure there's some more senior members that have been in that organization, but I mean, now rigs are running through it. Now ambulances are running through it, and even like with the Katrina stuff, it was, there's not enough tire plug kits in the city to to address what we need to get done. Today, if you get a hole in your tire in my organization, in the organization I work for, it's got to get a whole new tire. We don't do plugs. Now I'm sure they're running around there. I watched some of the videos from the task forces, like the urban rescue task forces, where they're on the side of the road broken down and fixing tires and fixing vehicles and apparatus. So even if you're the devastation of getting your rig washed away, but just running it through the water, running it through the debris, and I mean that's going to have a long lasting effect on the apparatus, the electrical connections. So we may not see the effect of it. I mean, obviously we've seen the effect of the devastation that it's going to have an immediate impact on our department. But, what's going to be the long lasting impact on the rig that ran through water for 5 days, trying to rescue people and do their mission and do it heroically like they were doing, is that, as a fleet manager, now you're going, oh my God, man, that's when all the electrical gremlins are going to creep up and the parts are going to wear out. And, that now's the time to start that process of insurance or,
Sure.
documenting, hey, we went through this amount of water, we got water into the air cleaner, whatever it is. And then to be able to track it along that route. So we know that, hey, we may have to total that vehicle out in a year or 2 years because of this, initial, obviously salt water is going to have a much more adverse effect than, fresh water, but just the same, electrical systems don't like water at all. So I can't, I reached out to our local, the chief that's in charge of requests, when somebody puts in an EMAC request or a request for, because, these states and, they go, hey, I need an engine strike team. I need an ambulance strike team. I need a search and rescue strike team. I'm like, hey, has anybody put in a request for, vehicle repair strike team or, but I mean, I'm sure the task forces, the urban and search and rescue task forces, I'm sure they have a component in there, if I remember correctly, even from Fairfax. But, what Asheville, I mean, that's a, it's not a big department, but it's a pretty substantial department. I mean, who's helping that guy out? I mean, I'm sure his, if he's got 2 mechanics or even 1 mechanic, he's got to be getting worn out. So.
Oh, for sure. Plus, could they even get to work? I mean, it was not easy there for a while just to get around.
I know, and I talked to I talked to Sam Massa, I think Saturday or Sunday, or didn't talk to him. I was like trying to find, I guess he got Starlink or something, and I'm like, hey man, do you need some help? And he says, we'll take anything we can get. And then I'm talking to one of my buddies. I said, all right, my buddy Sam needs some help. Let's figure it out. And it was like 15 hours, and we couldn't even be sure that we could get there.
Right.
That the road was even, I don't think for, Siri or MapQuest, I'm showing my age. Any of the OEM things were even showing the roads that were washed out, and then, Sam saying we're spending, 3 hours at a gas line, to get gas. It's just, how to, if you're not that urban rescue task force and have done this before, I mean, just jumping in a pickup truck with some chainsaws is going to help your buddy out. Yeah, that could be bad for you. So.
Well, we covered a lot today, Ricky. I don't know that we solved any problems, but we did cover. I should have said we were talking truck maintenance mostly, than
Yeah.
more so than trucks this time. But since it was still front of mind, having gone to that conference this week, I wanted to just touch base with you on a lot of those things, because I mean, a lot of what, like I said in the beginning, you listen to a tech who's based in upstate New York, and a tech that's based in, I don't know, South Dakota somewhere, and they're having the same challenges, So I mean, like what they were saying with the labor for the shops, I mean, it's you had a lot to say about that as well. So I mean, this is something that's going on. It's not something that's an easy fix, but it's something that we need to address. And you would talked about it on several levels. The municipal, what are we paying people at the government level versus on the private side. But these are all things. So like I said, I don't know that we solved anything, but hopefully those in the audience at least maybe got a couple of ideas on maybe how to solve some of the problems that they face all the time. And that's what we're trying to do here, to keep these guys going. So again, my thanks to you. What's that?
Yeah, this what we talk about here at Fire Apparatus and Emergency Equipment is not the sexy fire engineering stuff, with the fire pictures and all that sort of stuff. It's just, but it's important, and I've said this before. I believe is that I as a firefighter, as a chief and everything, is that I don't think that I appreciated this part of the fire service as much as I should have. In the last 8 years, I've immensely grown to understand the complexity, the importance of these people that fix these fire trucks, and the ones that that keep the rigs on the road. I mean, firefighters get in them and drive them like they stole them, man. It's and that's it, and I'm just as guilty as anybody else of doing that. But the care for them, once again, $1 million for an engine. We need to care for those things. They have to last in the fleet. They have to have longevity, and without care and without someone caring for them, the rig's going to fail. No manufacturer can make a rig that is firefighter proof and then preventive maintenance, lack of preventive maintenance proof. So it takes a lot of people to keep that rig on the road.
All right, perfect. Well, again, Ricky, my thanks to you for joining me today to talk about these things. If you have a topic that you would like me and Ricky to cover when we talk trucks, let me know. I'm at chris.mcclune@clarionevents.com. If you want to look at our archive of podcasts, it is available at fireapparatusmagazine.com/podcast. So again, this has been Chris McClune with Fire Apparatus and Emergency Equipment, along with Ricky Riley. Have a good one and stay safe. Thanks again, Ricky.
Thanks, Chris.